Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. It's Brendan Ziolo here, and I'm trying a new format for these videos, calling it B2B Marketing Unscripted. And I'm super happy to have Shana Nardecchia join me. We did a webinar a few months ago, and I couldn't wait to have Shana back because I wanted to cover a topic that's near and dear to her heart. And what's different about this format or recording that we're doing today is Shana's going to ask me questions. So it's not me just badgering the guests with questions. They get to ask me questions. So hopefully I provide some sort of interesting answers or we're in big trouble.
I ask hard questions, Brendan.
Oh, great. See, I knew I shouldn't have started with you if people were going to ask me questions. I need softball questions, Shana, softball ones. Anyway, I'm not going to break from tradition, though. I'm going to ask the first question, and then I will let you take your turn. But as I mentioned, I wanted to talk about marketing and revenue and that kind of broad topic today. And I think the best place to start is that there's a lot of terms out there, and marketing does a good job. Sometimes I think a bad job of just inventing new terms on a regular basis. And one of the newer ones is revenue marketing. So obviously a topic that fits well with what we're going to talk about today. But what does revenue marketing mean to you, and what are some of the key elements that are crucial in your mind to that concept?
Yeah, it's a good question, Brendan. And I think for every company, this will vary just slightly. But in a nutshell, revenue marketing to me is the part of marketing that is directly accountable for a share of the pipeline and the forecast and the annual revenue. To some extent, all of marketing should be accountable, in my opinion, but revenue marketing specifically is almost the bridge between marketing and sales. A lot of the revenue marketers I know have been salespeople in the past. They understand the sales cycle. They understand, the sales mentality, and they're almost the bridge between the two organizations.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I love the bridge analogy there. That definitely helps and makes a lot of sense to me, and hopefully makes a lot of sense to our listeners and watchers as well. All right, I'm bracing myself. Your turn.
All right. Okay, so I wrote mine down. So tell me, Brendan, from where you sit, how has the definition of success changed for marketing and revenue teams for your clients?
That's a good question. I think it changes frequently, but yeah, if I was to take a step back, one of the big changes I see and hear and get asked for a lot, which fits nicely with what you said about the bridge and about the focus on revenue, is I'm going to say results and the demand that marketing really delivers something that's tangible to the business. So, in the past, marketing could be more about delivering a bunch of content. I mean, it may be about delivering brand awareness. It may be about building, social media platforms and profiles. That's all important. Don't get me wrong. I mean, content, brand, social media, all that stuff is crucial and still part of marketing's role. But there's more asks, more pressure on marketing teams today to tie that to revenue, as you said. That's why I
Yeah.
loved your bridge analogy. So, I said results. They are expecting marketing to deliver, but they're also asking that it ties more closely to revenue. And I think that's a good thing. I mean, I felt that way, as I know you have too, in our many conversations over the years, that, marketing has a key role to play along with sales in delivering that revenue to the company. But a lot of marketing teams didn't want to take that on or didn't want to be accountable for it. And I think what's changed is that they don't have a choice anymore. They really need to refocus and really deliver on that.
Good answer, Brendan. I like it.
Woo! I dodged the bullet.
You
Answered the
passed.
first question. So kind of along that lines, and it was one of the conversations we had over the last few weeks, or maybe it was even longer than that, but you talk a lot about marketing having a seat at the revenue table, and I remembered that a couple weeks ago when I was wanted to write a blog and really drill down into, how does marketing earn that seat at the revenue table. And I thought of you as I was writing, because I know you've always had that
Yeah.
seat. In many companies you've had the seat, and you've always fought for it if you didn't, or marketing didn't before then, and I respect that a lot. But
Yeah.
my take on how they can earn a seat at the revenue table is on my blog, but I'd love to hear your take on, like, what does marketing need to do to earn that seat?
Well, I am curious, and I'll tell you kind of what what my feelings are, but I'm curious as to your opinion as well. But the first I ever heard of this, this takes me back to when we were both at Nokia, or actually, I think at the time it was Alcatel-Lucent. But I don't know. Did you ever work with Alice and Sarah?
Not closely, no. I know who
Yeah.
she is, though. Yeah.
But I remember distinctly, this was probably 12, 15 years ago, her saying, I want marketing to have a seat at the revenue table. And I didn't, I liked the idea, but it's something that's kind of always stuck with me. And if you think about it, B2B buyers are doing about 80%. The statistics say about 80% of their search before they ever talk to a salesperson. So if you don't have marketing at the revenue table, you're flying a little bit blind, because marketing, we really control most of that early stage influence on deals. We also see signal at scale, intent, digital behavior, content consumption. So for that reason, I think we need a seat at the revenue table. I think the question is how we get there. And I think that's what most marketers, senior marketers struggle with, is how you get there. And I think for the most part, most of the marketers that I know walk the right walk. And that is, I think you show up with numbers, not narratives. I think you speak in pipeline and win rate and velocity in annual revenue, not click through rates or impressions. I think you also co-own forecasts and targets, and I think that's pretty typical for marketing. But I think you're also visibly accountable when something doesn't work. You're not afraid to say, we spent $200,000, we got 500,000 in pipeline, or we didn't generate enough. It wasn't good enough. This is what we do to move forward to correct it. What do you
Wow.
think?
It's like, I think you read my blog. I know you
Yeah,
didn't, but I
I
think
did.
you
I
did.
did. I
I
did,
think you
Brendan.
did. No, I mean, you definitely hit the nail on the head with some of the points I had raised as well. I mean, the revenue, accountability, shared goals, alignment with sales. I mean, I'm not
Yeah.
at all surprised you would have started there. We've talked about that for many, many years. I think your data points and connecting the systems and, coming to the seat with results, not with, we did X pieces of content, or we got, a million followers, but none of them are in the ICP type scenario, that type of stuff. So really data that's focused on results. So those were definitely 2 points I raised. And, your 80% stat is, one I remember when I first heard that. I'm like, this is going to change how we look at things, and I think it has. And the fact that you need to build out what I call an integrated campaign to address that, right? So, I know some people, some marketers are like, the buyer's journey isn't relevant, or it's dead, or the funnel is dead, and all these types of things. I mean, everyone writes those for headlines, but while the journey is probably not linear for anyone and people can move around and enter at any point, you still need to cover all those phases, all those questions, all those engagements that the buyer is having, mainly online, but even at events when sales is not involved, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and that's a big chunk of that. And, you can map the journey with 3 steps, with 5 steps, with 10 steps. You can draw it with circles or lines, or it doesn't matter. It's that understanding that if you're not there early, you're not making the short list. And if you're not giving proof points so they know you're a viable solution and a credible solution, like sales has an immensely uphill battle to get in front of them if they can at all, right? So that full funnel, integrated, full journey, whatever you want to call it, I think that's the other way, that when marketing sits at the revenue table and maps all that out, I mean, that's going to resonate with most of the salespeople
Yeah.
I know that I have talked to, right? Because quite often, it's a brochure and that's it. And they're like, no, I need content that gets deeper, more pain point, proof points. I mean, there's all these different formats they need to do. So, I think that's another piece. And I know you were, covering that in your 80% point, but yeah, I just wanted to drill down a bit more there.
Okay. Well, Brendan, so that brings me to my next question. So, we both know there are a lot of moving parts to building a campaign. Which one is the most important to you, or it all falls apart? You and I have had some discussions on this in the past. I'm
Yeah.
curious as to where you stand these days.
Yeah, we have, but I think I'm going to take a step back today, and we can chat about it a bit further. And I'm debating 2 points in my head. That's why I'm buying time here, but I'm going to put them both together, and it's unfair because you said one, but to me it's really at the starting point. It's like, who is your ICP? Who is that audience? Making sure it's well defined, makes sense. You have the solution to deliver on that. And then you're communicating a message that differentiates what you do from the competition. So I know I cheated and kind of gave you 1.5 or 2 there things, but I've seen a lot of campaigns fall apart because the ICP is everyone or all the verticals or all these people, right? And then a message that sounds like everyone else, right? So that's why I kind of put the two together. But I definitely think that's one of the areas that, continues to be a struggle and is not a good foundation for those campaigns.
I like it. Do you remember when it's been a few years, but when we had the discussion content versus tactics, and which one was the most important? And I think I told you this the other day, but I think at the time I'm like, well, it's all about how you take it to market. And as I've grown as a marketer, I think I would take a step back, and I think I would side with your opinion that content is king.
Yeah, and but I do think it's both, right? I think that was kind of the
Yeah,
point even back then was, we could debate. I
yeah,
think the expression was one was king and one was queen, right? But I think as we go, I think that
yeah,
was the graphic you sent me if I remember correctly.
yeah.
But I mean it needs both, right? Which is
It
really
does.
what it comes down to. And even on even when we get into the paid media and the channels and some of the tactics, right? Like it's not one. I mean, I think a lot of marketing teams, I know I already picked one and now I'm going to pick a third thing that fails, is like they double down and focus on one thing, right? Like we're going to do 50 events this year, or I'm exaggerating, 10 events this year and nothing else. Or I'm only doing search and nothing else. I'm only doing link, like whatever it is, right? They put all their eggs, all their budget in that one basket. And it's like, to the point on buyers, they don't get their information from one source. They get it from a lot of different sources, and you need to be on as many of those as is feasible given resources and budgets. I know you can't be everywhere, but you have to be on more than one.
Yeah, Brendan, talking about failure points, and I know that we had said we had discussed this a little bit today, but so I'm jumping around a bit,
Yeah.
but I'm curious as to your opinion as well, but customer marketing or that post sale marketing where I almost feel like it's a sleeper in some companies. That you hand it off to customer experience to implement, and marketing isn't as involved. Obviously your good salesperson is going to go in and they're going to knock it out of the park and make sure and stay on that customer to broaden the sales. But really, marketing should be, in my opinion, a key piece of that, where you have some repeatable, scalable actions that happen always as a post-sell mechanism, where marketing is working very closely with customer experience, and that motion is built into the customer experience mechanism, to where you're growing sales and expanding on that customer's baseline is important.
Yeah, it's so funny you said that, because I was, I'm thinking and probably calling the series that we're recording right now, B2B Marketing Unscripted. I'm now thinking no one's going to believe us, because it's funny you just say that, because I've always built my journeys with 3 phases, mainly for simplicity, right? Because I find the more complex it gets, you end up debating names of phases and when people move and stuff. And I'm like, you're kind of missing the point. It's like there's a start, middle, end, right? Like,
That's right.
just keep it simple. But it's funny where you were going, because I've been looking at, rebuilt one of the diagrams I use in my presentations, all the line, and it still had the start, middle, end. It's in awareness, engagement, conversion. But it's funny, as I sat there looking at it, I'm like, I really might need to think of a 4th phase, which is afterwards, after they become a customer. What else can you do? What else do you need to do from a marketing perspective? Not only
Yeah.
to turn them into champions, because that's great, case studies, success stories, etc., but to keep them as a happy customer. So I guess I'll have to go redo my diagram, thanks to you. So maybe I will take us in a slightly different direction, just because I know some of the stuff you've been working on, and because, well, this is a marketing conversation video recording, and we need to cover AI at some point in this one. So I'm going to rip the bandage off, and I'm going to ask you the AI question. But I know you've been looking at this for a while. I know you've got some experience here. You've tried a bunch of different things. But maybe if we focus AI more around revenue marketing, or this, what marketing can do to drive revenue. What are some of the tools? What are some of the things you've seen that are working that people need to consider? And, if you have some, what are the things that, I tried it, didn't work, or, did something here and it's just not ready. AI is not ready for it. So yeah, kind of give us your overview of AI in the revenue marketing world.
Yeah, it's a good question, Brendan, and one that I like. I love AI, and I think, like much of the world, I'm still trying to get my hands around all that it can do, because it's so enormous. A lot of people are using AI for content, and that's where most of the folks start. And honestly, I think this is a little bit of a fail with some companies, in that AI is being used, and the content isn't really differentiated. They're using what AI spits out. And you know what? It all sounds the same. And I think that is one of the big fails. I think you need to be using AI as a draft. If you're gonna, and I'm huge. I think it saves enormous time, and I think it's great to start your content as a draft. But it still needs that human element. It still needs you to go in and make it more robust and more lively. And you really don't want it to sound like everybody else's content. So the content we put out there from a revenue marketing standpoint is, it needs to be dynamic, and it needs to cut through the noise, and it needs to cut through the clutter, because people are busy and there's a lot of noise out there. So I think that's important. The other thing, from a revenue marketing standpoint, a lot of people are playing with AI agents to build on intelligence and ICPs and prioritization of accounts. And I think that has enormous potential. I also think AI has enormous potential around data analytics together in a quicker, more efficient fashion. Because if you think about it, and it's a struggling point for small and medium businesses having an analytics person, because analytics take time, a lot of time. Having an analytics person that you're paying XYZ amount a year, you know, it becomes hard to justify. So using AI to do that for you is key. Now the problem's going to be, and the age old issue is the data underneath it needs to be correct. And the data it pulls from needs to be correct. But I think, in my opinion, especially for small and medium businesses, AI has enormous potential in the data and analytics space for a revenue marketer.
Yeah, and I do like your draft point on the content, but I think it's even broader than that, like just getting ideas, suggestions, insights. It can deliver you 10 things quickly. What could I do at an upcoming event to get people to my booth? I'm randomly picking something, right? If someone took that list of 10 and did it, it wouldn't work. But it's great as a
Yeah,
draft, right? Like
you're right.
someone with experience will be like, okay, item number 3 never works. Item number 4, 5, I was already doing, but 6 is interesting. Like that I hadn't thought of, or I forgot about it, or whatever. So, like as a sounding board, which is kind of your draft example on content, but as a sounding board for some of these other things. And yeah, I'm totally with you on the data side and the helping you do research on your either target audience or target publications if you're on the media side or whatever those are. So as a research and tool to help you with new ideas, or at least quick ideas, right? That work or don't
Yeah.
work type thing.
All right. So I think it's my turn.
Oh, I was just hoping you'd forget.
Okay. So what's one lesson you wish more people in marketing understood about aligning with sales or driving revenue?
Wow. You were right when you said you weren't just going to ask me questions. They were going to be hard ones. It's the
Well,
one.
this is, the reason I ask you this, is there is definitely some contention within companies over, sales and working too close to the sales or being too much of a sales oriented marketer, which I'm a big believer in,
Yeah.
by the way. So I'm curious as to your opinion.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm not sure I'm really answering the question maybe as you intended it, but I don't want to repeat what we covered. So I think we covered a lot of my lessons when we talked about the earning a seat at the revenue
Yeah.
table, like,
Mhm.
aligning on goals, the data, the integration of systems. Like I think that's all super, super important, but we kind of covered that. I think and I'm not sure this is a lesson or an insight, but the one thing that I have found super helpful for 2 reasons. One is your sales team is the best and then sometimes only channel to your customers and prospects, right? And frequently marketing will build messaging, content, presentations, campaign, like the list goes on and on and on without getting input from sales. And I get
Yeah.
that they're busy. I get they have their priorities around pipeline and closing deals, et cetera, et cetera. But I always find it interesting that you don't ask and get that feedback early. And it does a couple things, right? One is it's a valuable resource and there's a lot of knowledge there that you should know. Secondly, if sales doesn't buy into your campaign or piece of content or whatever, like they're just not going to
Bingo. I
use it.
agree with you.
So this helps them become more involved with it. And it also helps you build a stronger relationship with sales. And, if you're not at the revenue table, you'll have some champions to get you there. or you'll get just a lot more insights and those conversations will be easier. So I've always respected and admired your ability to get so super close to sales, and I think you've built some amazing relationships when I've worked with you with the sales team. But yeah, there's these little things where like marketing will be like they don't have time, or they don't they won't give me good feedback, or whatever the case may be. It's like
Right.
you got to get past that. So I guess it is a
Yeah.
lesson. I was going to say an insight, but I guess it is a lesson. Talk to sales
Yeah.
about your messaging, your campaigns, your ICP, your content, whatever. They may not always answer, but they will some of the time, and it's always valuable.
Yeah, and you made me think of something else, the getting sales buy-in as to what defines a lead. So the leads that you're giving them, if they're not buying into, or
Yeah.
they don't understand how that became a lead or why that is a lead. So one of the things I always have tried to do is sales helps me build from the ground up and determine what defines a lead. What do you want a lead to look like before I pass it over
Yeah.
to you? Because if you agree on that and meet that criteria, they're much more likely to follow up on the lead, and you don't have this MQL graveyard. And anyone who's been in marketing for any amount of time knows what I'm talking about there.
Yeah. No, that's very good. Yeah, see, your lesson was better than mine. Should have known.
Yeah.
But I do realize I'm sure you and I could keep this going for 2,
Yeah.
3, 4 more hours, but I'm not sure our audience will stick with us that long. And so I do want to wrap it up, but kind of as a final question to you is, again, a bit higher level maybe, but we've both seen marketing evolve rapidly sometimes, maybe sometimes not as rapidly as we would like. But it still evolves a lot, and there's always new trends. Like no matter what time frame you're looking at, there's always some new shiny tool, some new shiny idea, whatever. So maybe, I guess, two-parter. One is there some trend you see today that you think is overhyped? And then is there something you're seeing today that people are like, you got to go do this? They're asleep at the wheel, so to speak, on that. So kind of a marketing trend you think is overhyped, and one that's being ignored or missed by a lot of people.
Um. Okay. So the one that I think the sleeper, as I termed it earlier, is customer marketing. I think there is a huge amount of potential in customer marketing done correctly. I think that is probably the underutilized. The big, that's a tough one. I kind of think the overhyped uh, revenue marketing point would go back to content, and content that is in AI, the content that's generated by AI without maybe a full blown strategy, or you're using AI to replace a strategy, or in absence of a strategy. I think that is probably one of the big issues I've seen. Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, I was definitely going to go maybe not just specific to content, but I was thinking, yeah, like there are AI is an extremely powerful tool. It's changing quickly, but I think we all have a lot to learn, right? So I think people who are using it, like you said, to create content and like not having a human in the loop, or, I've seen some of these tools, whether it be an email tool or a LinkedIn tool, or there's a variety of tools out there. I mean, they all have AI responses built in or AI messages built in, and like, they're really not, they don't sound like people sometimes, but they definitely don't sound sincere, right? So I mean, to your point early on, like if you're using it as a draft, if you're using it to help you be efficient, go for it. Powerful. If you're using it as the finished product, I think some of that's overhyped, and it's really, and it has created those, plethora of content, as you point out, that's just not standing out, right? So it's got to be used in the right way. And I think too many people are using it, as you suggested, just to do stuff and replace things or replace people
Yeah.
or that type of stuff.
Yeah, something else that I've seen showing up in marketing articles recently that I'm a big proponent of is velocity and moving that lead through the system a little bit quicker and getting those accounts that may be hung up in mid funnel or the late funnel and how you pull them through. It's getting it's been getting a lot of attention the past 6 months, or maybe it's just what I've been reading. However, I'm a big believer in the compelling event and developing an offer, especially at the end of the year, that can pull someone through to get them to close at the end of the year. And I think, as marketers, sometimes we just think that's a sales motion when really it should be a marketing sales motion.
Yeah, and it's funny because I just recently I've been doing these videos on, I call them the Get Found series, but they're essentially on demand gen, integrated marketing, that type of stuff, right? And I added a fourth episode recently, and it was really around this stat. I love your 80% stat, but the other stat that I even forget, and I think a lot of marketers forget, is there's only 95% of your buyers are not in market at any given time, right? Only
I saw
5%
that.
are,
Yes,
right?
that was a good
And
video, Brendan.
yeah, and it's one of those that, you don't think about it, but like basically, like the odds are against you that you found the right people at the right time that sales can close, right? But the problem is marketers forget about that 95% and kind of let them go, right? So like they didn't hit the criteria, sales didn't engage, something else happened, and you forget about them, right? But there's this immense opportunity to go back to them on a regular basis through a number of different channels. Like I'm not just talking blasting them with emails every week or something, right? Like there's just a lot of opportunities to engage with them, and they're a warmer audience to you. So, you know, I know I asked you what, an evolution stuff. I'm not sure this is necessarily an evolution or just it's been an oversight for years, but, keep that in mind as you're building out these programs. And I think there's a gold mine in many organizations of a database of
Agreed.
people who had a challenge, didn't buy the day you sent the email, but either are still looking, maybe were disappointed by a competitive product, or haven't, still need more on that type thing. And, make sure you leverage that. So I think that's important too.
Good point. Well, Brandon, I always enjoy a good conversation with a fellow marketer,
As do
especially
I.
you. Yeah.
Yeah. Really appreciate your time here, Shannon. I'm happy that you were able to join me for this new format. And I should have known you'd ask tough questions, but I think I survived. So
You did
we'll
great.
see if I'm willing to tackle it again. But really appreciate your time here. And I hope everyone got some interesting insights from this conversation.
All right. Thanks, Brendan.